off the first episode of the Redress South Bend podcast. With us, we have Executive Director of Hoosier Conservative Voices, Ben Horvath.
Thanks for hosting me, Logan. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Ben, for those who don't know, what is Hoosier Conservative Voices?
So Hoosier Conservative Voices is a political action committee based right here in St. Joe County. We exist to help elect conservative leadership at the local level. We were formed in 2020. We've been involved in a few different election cycles here locally and have, we think, contributed toward the success that Republicans have had these past few cycles. And, we do several different things around grassroots campaigning. We host events. We do candidate strategy, candidate advertising, all in an effort to sort of help elect conservative leadership at the local level.
So you mentioned those words, political action committee. Mm-hmm. What is a political action committee?
So it's a separate committee that exists to advance a certain platform or a set of beliefs. So a lot of times, like certain industries will have a PAC because they want to see that the public policy that's enacted that will help, further their own cause. It's distinct from a political party and political candidate. And PACs make independent expenditures, usually in advance of their agenda or mission. So it's subject to the same sort of public disclosure laws in terms of how their campaign resources are spent. But it's a separate entity from a political party and a political candidate.
Okay, so Hoosier Conservative Voices is separate from the St. Joseph County Republican Party. Mm-hmm. But what is there a relationship, or is there any overlap? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so no formal relationship. We're two distinct organizations. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap in terms of our mission. The Republican Party exists to help elect Republican leadership locally, and 99.99% of the time that we're supporting the same candidates. But we are two distinct organizations. One of our founders, the current GOP party chair, Jackie Horvath, she was a founding member of HCV. Once she was caucused in as the party chair in June of 2024, she formally resigned from HCV just because we wanted to keep the two entities separate. And she's been obviously a great financial help to us, but we really are very mindful of keeping the two organizations separate from each other.
So how is HCV organized? Do you have a board? Do you have any employees?
Yeah, so I am the one full-time employee that we have, executive director. We have a 5-person board of directors. Our board president is Mark Rolfes, who's been great to work with, has some really great ideas. He's probably the best numbers person that I've ever worked with. But we have a board of directors that meets at least quarterly, usually more often than that. And then I'm the one full-time employee of the organization. We do have other people that we'll work with, usually around campaign season. We'll pay independent contractors and people who do some grassroots campaigning, door-to-door work, phone calls. But I'm the only full-time employee, and we're overseen by a board of directors.
Let's talk a little bit about HCV's history. So how did you get founded?
Yeah, so 2019, the municipal races in South Bend, Republicans, it's a tall lift in the city of South Bend. As you living here your whole life, you're probably aware of that. We got involved with Sean Haas's campaign. He was the Republican candidate for mayor in South Bend. It was a very sort of grassroots effort. Myself, my older sister Erin, who's always been very involved in politics, and was actually involved before I was. She was involved in, going way, way back, 2007. She was involved in a gentleman called Juan Manigo's municipal campaign. But anyway, myself, Erin, and then my mom were involved in Sean's campaign in 2019. And, we were sort of the core campaign team, so we were very involved in the day-to-day sort of operations, and it was really just something that we were kind of doing on the side because Erin and Mom both are very involved in obviously our family business, but it was something that we were doing on the side. But we really saw a lot of enthusiasm amongst Republican voters, and people who were really not used to, a competitive Republican running for a seat like that. And we got some folks engaged that hadn't been engaged before. And we had sort of a lot of enthusiasm at the local level, and we said, hey, what do we do after this election cycle? We wanted to keep people engaged, so we said, why don't we form a political action committee? And we knew that there were some local races on the horizon in 2020 and then 2022 election cycle. And so we said, hey, why don't we form this PAC? The county's a little bit much more winnable than the city level, so we said, why not form this PAC and see what kind of impact we can make in the next few election cycles.
So then you ended up getting involved in those next couple election cycles.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that 2020, 22, or 24 election cycle?
Yeah, so 2020 was, I was involved with a state rep race. I did a lot of door knocking for Jake Teshka. He ran for a seat out in the southwest part of the county. We had some other local races, county commissioner's seat that was up that cycle. Actually, 2 county commissioner seats that were up that cycle. And we supported Derek Dieter in his run for county commissioner, Deb Fleming in her reelection. And, we were kind of still a small sort of organization. We had a decent social media following, and we posted regularly and did some things online, but then we did some mailers as well. And, it was none of our full-time jobs at the time, but we still were engaged in any way that we can, and had a little taste of success in 2020. Things didn't go as well as we would have liked at the national level, but at the county level, we were really successful and had unanimous control of the county commissioners. Board of County Commissioners was Republican controlled for the first time in, I believe, history. And so just found ways to keep that momentum moving. And 2022 was an even bigger year. We had a great slate of candidates that decided to jump in. And county council had sort of been a goal, I think, for a lot of conservatives locally that, hey, we want to see if we can get control of the body, because we hadn't, to the best of our knowledge, I don't think Republicans have ever had control of the county council, so it was a first time in history kind of thing. And there was several other countywide seats that were up that cycle as well. And so we had a lot of really qualified candidates who decided to jump in, and HCV really saw a big opportunity to support those candidates.
So without even knowing it, without most people knowing it, HCV's been very involved in their everyday life by influencing elections or the candidates that are putting that legislation forward.
Yeah, we'd like to think so. Social media was sort of how we got started. We do a lot of advertising around campaign time on social media. 2022 was when I would say was our first cycle where we got outside of social media. We started doing radio advertising, did a few mailers in 22 as well. And so, we've sort of been growing in how we advertise. 24 was an even bigger year. We did network. We advertised on regular network television for the first time in our history. In our history. We'd like to think that we're growing in influence as we sort of each election cycle.
So let's shift a little bit and let's talk about Ben. So let's talk about your background.
Mm-hmm.
Did you grow up here in South Bend, and let's talk about where you went to school?
Yeah, so did grow up in South Bend. Went to St. Joe High School, the old St. Joe High School. Graduated in 2011. One of the things was I loved Notre Dame growing up. My grandmother worked at the university. I grew up going to football and basketball games, and it was always sort of a dream of mine to attend Notre Dame, and was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to go there as an undergrad and also in law school. So I've stayed sort of stayed local, I'd say, and even after my educational experiences, I feel very at home in this community and wanted to stay around and feel like I'm doing what I can to make a difference.
And what made you become interested in politics, especially at like a local level?
Yeah, so it was. It's always been sort of a family thing. I think I talked about my mom and older sister. They were always very engaged politically. Mom was a political science major at IU. My older sister was a political science major at St. Mary's. So it's always been sort of a family interest. I first started to pay attention, I would say probably during high school, about what was going on at the national level. And that was kind of how I got my first exposure and just kind of following the news cycle. That's when I would say I first sort of kind of started to develop sort of a political ideology or outlook, or that's when I would say I started to say, hey, I'm a conservative. Um, and just obviously kept up on what was going on, but then I learned that sort of the biggest impact you can have is at the local level. And so I think I learned that and started to get more involved here locally, and that's the most direct way that you can make an impact.
So let's talk about your job experience. So how's your job experience or your education? How does that relate to your political background?
Yeah. So during undergrad, I was constitutional studies minor, and it was always kind of a passion of mine, politics, and I loved those are my favorite courses in undergrad were my law courses and stuff relating to politics. And I was an English major, and so they say that English majors make good law students because it's a lot of reading and writing and that kind of thing. So I always kind of had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to go to law school. Graduated undergrad in 2015. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Had the opportunity to work at my family-owned business. Did some leasing work for them, which was a good sort of real-world experience of getting some legal experience. Had a period of time where I contributed. Had some journalistic experience. Wrote for the Elkhart Truth for close to a year, and some other online publications, and that gave me the opportunity to kind of cover some local government stuff and see sort of the political process at work. But it was something where I kind of said, well, why don't never felt like I had sort of a career, if you will. So I decided to go to law school in 2018. Applied to Notre Dame. I didn't know where else to apply. I figure I went here once, I might as well try it again. So
It's a good place to apply.
yes, it is. It is. And so had the opportunity. 2018 was my first year of law school. It was quite the experience, and I had an opportunity to make some really good connections. And I knew that I wanted to use my degree to kind of get more engaged and more involved in the issues that I care about. And so law school was a great opportunity to do that.
In moving forward now to 2025, let's talk about your current position.
Sure.
So you didn't come in here wearing a robe. So I'm assuming, it's not the Honorable Ben Horvath. So
no. Contrary to what you might read on the internet, no, I don't wear a robe during the day. So
okay, so you were not you're not in the running to be the magistrate of the probate court.
If I am, I'm not aware of it, but I don't believe I am. No.
Okay, well, we just had to get that out of the way.
Clear
Okay,
the air.
so as of 2025, then what is your current position?
Yeah, so executive director HCV, that's a full-time job. So oversee all the sort of operation stuff that we do. Even though it's not an election year, we're still going to be engaged. We're still going to host events. We're still going to be doing some stuff to sort of lay the groundwork for our next election cycle, because it's going to be a really busy one. In addition to what I do at HCV, I also own a small legal practice on the side. So have some legal projects that I'm working on. But between those two things and keeping up with things at home, more than enough for me to do.
And with your legal practice, you've had some, you've had some big wins with the related to some abortion legislation, right?
Yeah, so had the opportunity to work with some folks at the Thomas More Society, and we represented a group called Voices for Life, which does some great pro-life work here at the local level. Um, they are a group that does enforcement work on abortions statewide, so they review what's called terminated pregnancy reports. And they look at them to see any sort of potential illegality among abortion providers. And the state decided after SEA 1 went into effect that they weren't going to release those as public records like they had for decades previously. And so that was really a major issue for Voices for Life, because they have this big sort of enforcement as one of their major things that they do. So they decided to pursue legal action, and I helped represent them along with some attorneys, some great attorneys at Thomas More Society. And we sued the Department of Health. And I can't be too public about that because it's an ongoing thing. But let's just say that good things will most likely come out of that.
Well, we won't. Yeah, we won't press you on that because we're not trying to get you. We're not trying to get you in trouble.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely that's probably my number one issue, I'd say, in terms of politics is, at the local level, you don't have a huge impact on deciding abortion law, but it still is important. I would say it's dispositive to me if somebody's not pro-life. I'm not going to support them because it's sort of my number one issue that I look at. And so anything that HCV does, we make sure that the candidates we support are pro-life. And that's been a major issue that's sort of been a driving force for me, I'd say, and what I do politically. Obviously very important.
Perfect. And then now from here, let's shift into our goals for 2025,
Sure.
2026. So in your opinion, after I guess landslide victories in 2024, where do conservatives go from here?
Yeah, so there were obviously huge wins in 24. I think the shift is, it's easy, not easy, but it's much easier, I'd say, during election time to get people excited and keep them sort of engaged and get them to turn out at events and stuff. It's a little bit more difficult once you move out of election time. We hope to keep the people that are engaged or were engaged during the election, we hope to keep them engaged in what we're doing. So we're looking at hosting different events during 2025, even though it's not an election year. We're just trying to stay as up to date as we can on what's going on locally, at the state level, nationally, because we feel like it's important for conservatives to still have sort of a voice and seat at the table, even if it's not during an election time. So just finding ways to keep conservatives plugged into what's going on. And then, before we know it, it'll be election time again. And there's some really big ones on the horizon in 26. Some really important local seats that are up. Sheriff and prosecutor are definitely on the radar. Some other countywide seats that Republicans were successful at in 2022. We're going to be working to defend those seats. County clerk, county assessor. And then county council and county commissioner will also be up for election next year as well. So defending those two bodies. Keeping folks engaged in 2025, kind of laying the groundwork for the work that's ahead in 26. It's obviously Republicans have the presidency, the House, and the Senate. There's always, or usually in American politics, that backlash electorally the next election cycle. So we anticipate, a tall lift in this next election cycle. But so it's really important to us to sort of lay the groundwork now, and because it's going to be an uphill climb, but one that we feel like we're up for.
And if somebody wants to get involved and someone wants to help keep that momentum, what can they do?
Sure. So I'd say sign up for our email list. It's a pretty simple thing, but that's how we keep up That's how we stay engaged with people. We send out emails. We're not going to spam you or anything, but that lets you know about local events that are going on. Anything that we host, we blast out on our email list. Social media, just simple things like following us on social media. That kind of keeps people up to date about what we're up to. And we try, and there's so many different groups at the local level that are involved with things, and you have obviously the local party, but then you also have other local sort of advocacy groups and people that are engaged with different groups. And HCV tries to support those separate groups as well. So anything that's going on that's conservative related or issues that conservatives care about, we try and promote those. But I think online, email list, and social media are the best ways to get engaged.
And then coming forward in this next year or so, how do you plan to expand or grow HCV's reach or influence?
Yeah, so we were involved last cycle. We were involved with some statewide races. We hosted, I think, close to all of the Republican gubernatorial candidates. We hosted them for lunch and gave an opportunity for voters to sit down and ask them questions that they cared about. So we do have sort of a statewide focus, or we have had it in the past. What we found is that there's just so much going on locally that it's a lot. And so this next election cycle especially, there's going to be plenty of work for us to do. There might be opportunities for us to get involved in some races outside of St. Joe County, but I think the primary focus will be on winning some seats that we feel like are competitive next cycle. And focusing locally, I say, is going to be the main focus going forward.
And you guys have done a great job on bringing a lot of attention to St. Joseph County. Like recently at, I know this is the Republican Party meetings, the monthly meetings, but you guys have had the Secretary of State here.
Yeah.
You guys have had the governor has been at your events.
Yes.
Or was that an HCV event?
Yeah, so we hosted, it was now Governor Braun. Braun and several other statewide candidates did a bus tour in 2024. I think it was like about a month before the election. And their stop in St. Joe County, they chose to stop at HCV, which we were honored to host them. And they pulled up in their big bus in the parking lot, and we made sure we had a crowd there for them. So yeah, we're always looking for different ways to get people involved at the state and even the federal level. Our representative here, Rudy Yacom's been great to work with, and his team has been really supportive of what HCV is doing. And so we're always looking for opportunities to loop them into what we're doing. And I think a lot of them are surprised when they hear that St. Joe County has a strong conservative presence now, because I think for years, especially at the state level, people have kind of traditionally kind of written St. Joe County off as Democrat controlled, but that's obviously changing. So when statewide officials come here and they see the enthusiasm and the just the grassroots support, I think they're a little bit surprised, right? Because they're used to seeing that little blue dot on the map where St. Joe County is, but that's certainly changing now.
And it feels good as a resident when we see Braun or we see Rakita, we see Diego Morales, we see them not just here in St. Joe County, we see them, here in our restaurants or government buildings.
Absolutely.
And it makes us feel heard.
Yeah.
That's something we feel we struggle with our local city councils or our local, our local governments.
Yeah.
And then you guys are doing a great job with it, that you guys are accessible, and then not just at a local level. You guys are saying, hey, we're going to bring the state officials here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it says, hey, we're going to go all the way to the top.
Yeah.
So that's something that I feel, or at least I appreciate that, that we're going to work with top down.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's any time, because at the end of the day, being an elected official, it's a public service, and we probably need more officials who kind of view their work as that. But any chance we have to get public officials to sit down and sort of connect voters with them, and they can share their views and share their concerns. HCV is always trying to do that. We hosted a series last year before the election called Lunch with Lawmakers, a small lunch among people who've supported us financially. It gave them the opportunity to sit down with their elected officials. We had several that were willing to share their time. Jake Teshka, who's a state representative that represents the southwest part of the county, he was our first one. We had State Senator Linda Rogers sat down with us. And then the one right before the election, U.S. Representative Rudy Yakum shared some time with us. And each time it was just an opportunity for a small group to sit down and just discuss things with their lawmaker and share, concerns or questions that they had for them. And then it gave, the lawmaker the opportunity to sort of share with their constituents what they were working on. And it was just very informal and stuff, but it got a really positive reception. And I think, it's easy to see people on TV and get mad at them and frustrated at what they're doing. But, when you're able to sit down and share time with people and listen to, what they're working on, I think constituents really feel strongly about that. And any opportunity that we have to sort of plug voters in, constituents in with their elected officials, I think that's beneficial to everybody.
And that's something that, as someone, again, who struggled with, meeting with my officials at a local level, that's something that I've definitely appreciated from at least the conservative side of the aisle. I've found that the conservatives are so far, at least in Indiana, are the most open and willing to sit down and willing to talk and willing to put their phone numbers out there for you to call or text.
Yeah, well, that's really great to hear
concerns.
Yeah, that's great to hear you say that because, I think there is a sense, we've been Democrat controlled we were Democrat controlled for, 150 years or whatever. So there was that sense that, hey, as Democrats, we've controlled this county forever, and what are you doing trying to, question what we're doing? And I like to think that we've kind of gotten rid of that way of thinking, and we're running competitive races now, and obviously winning. Republicans are winning seats now, so I think it's good, and maybe even it's good for Democrats, I'd say, because I think getting challenged and having a opposition party that's active, I think it actually benefits both sides really, and voters as well.
Right, 9-0 is not healthy.
Right, exactly.
That doesn't help. Yeah. 6-3, 5-4. That's healthy.
I would agree with that, as long as that 6-3 is Republican.
No. But I'd like to see if you had any closing thoughts or any closing comments.
HCV, we're focused on state and local races, and I just want to reiterate that local races are important. I think the great thing about this country is that local is better, just generally speaking. I think that's how the Constitution was written, that a lot of these issues that we talk about, solutions are often found at the local level. So I think making sure that we have, qualified local leaders who are responsive to their constituents, I just think that's really important. And the work that HCV does in helping support qualified local conservative leaders, it's just really important. And I think you can have the biggest impact at the local level. So just reiterate to people watching that, local races are very important. They affect your life, more directly than the national level. So the more people we have engaged here locally, the better.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate your time, and I want to thank you for, again, being transparent and coming out here and being on the first episode of the Redress South Bend podcast.
I appreciate the opportunity. Very glad you hosted me, and hope I provided some good content for you. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you for watching.